The entire airport terminal froze as Marcus Harrington slammed his platinum card on the counter. "You denied my children boarding because they're black? I own 60% of this airline." His phone call lasted 10 seconds. Across America, 300 planes suddenly stopped taxiing. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever witnessed or experienced discrimination while traveling. Now, let's see how a seemingly routine airport check-in transformed into a nationwide airline shutdown and a powerful stand against racial injustice. The morning had started with such excitement for 14-year-old twins Jamal and Jaden Harrington. This would be their first solo flight from Newark International Airport to visit their grandparents in Atlanta. Their father had thoroughly prepared them for the journey, reviewing every detail from security procedures to boarding protocols. The boys were impeccably dressed in designer clothes, not to show off, but because their father always stressed the importance of presentation, especially as young black men in America. "Remember what I told you," their father had said that morning. "Be polite, keep your documents ready, and call me if there's any problem." The twins arrived at the airport 3 hours early, as instructed. Their Louis Vuitton carry-ons contained their laptops, books, and a few changes of clothes for the weekend visit. In their wallets were their student IDs, birth certificates, and the confirmation printouts for their first-class tickets. A special treat from their father who wanted their first solo flight to be memorable. The check-in process went smoothly. The agent smiled at them, checked their documentation, and directed them toward security. The twins felt grown up navigating the busy terminal, remembering all their father's instructions. They passed through security without incident, though Jamal noticed the agent spent a little longer examining his ID than he had for the white teenager in front of them. Still, they reached their gate with plenty of time to spare. At gate B23, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Gate agent Sharon Wilson looked up as the twins approached, her smile fading as they presented their first-class boarding passes. "These are first-class tickets," she said, her tone suggesting a question rather than a statement. "Yes, ma'am," Jaden responded politely. "Our father purchased them for us." Sharon's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you're traveling alone? No adults?" "Yes, ma'am," Jamal answered. "We're visiting our grandparents in Atlanta." The twins watched as a white teenage girl, approximately their age, approached the counter moments later. Sharon barely glanced at her documentation before smiling and wishing her a pleasant flight. Sharon turned back to the twins. "I'll need to verify these tickets. They seem unusual." Her fingers tapped at her computer. "These must be some kind of special program tickets, right? Discount vouchers or something?" Jaden shook his head. "No, ma'am. Our father purchased them directly from your website. Full fare." Sharon's expression hardened. "Well, there seems to be an issue with them in our system. Who did you say purchased these?" "Our father, Marcus Harrington," Jamal explained, maintaining his composure despite his growing unease. "And how did he pay for them?" Sharon asked, her tone increasingly skeptical. Jaden blinked in confusion. "With his credit card, I think. Is there a problem?" Instead of answering, Sharon motioned to a nearby security guard. Brett Thompson approached, hand resting casually on his belt near his taser. "Everything okay here, Sharon?" he asked, his eyes immediately fixing on the twins rather than the gate agent. "I'm just verifying these tickets. They're showing up as potentially fraudulent in our system," Sharon replied, though her computer screen showed valid confirmations. Jamal reached for his phone. "I can call our father right now. He can confirm everything." "Put that phone away," Brett instructed sharply. "No calls right now." All around them, other passengers were boarding the flight without incident. The twins noticed several white teenagers, some even younger than them, passing through with barely a glance from Sharon. "I don't understand," Jaden said, his voice starting to waver. "Our tickets are valid. We have our IDs. What's the problem?" Sharon exchanged a look with Brett. "We need to conduct additional screening. Step aside, please." For the next 15 minutes, as other passengers continued boarding, the twins stood to the side while Sharon repeatedly claimed to be verifying their tickets. Their calls to their father went unanswered as he was in a meeting. Finally, as the last passengers were boarding, Sharon made her decision. "I'm sorry, but I cannot allow you to board this flight. There are security concerns with your tickets." "What concerns?" Jamal demanded, his patience finally wearing thin. "You haven't explained anything. That's not something I'm at liberty to discuss," Sharon replied coldly. "You'll need to return to the ticket counter for assistance." As the gate door closed and the flight prepared for departure, the twins were left standing at the empty gate, humiliated and confused. Jaden finally got through to their father's voicemail and left a desperate message. "Dad, they wouldn't let us on the plane. We don't know why. Please call back." What the twins didn't know was that their father's response would shake the entire airline industry to its core. Marcus Harrington sat at the head of the conference table in the downtown Manhattan office of Harrington Technologies. At 42, he had built his tech security company from a dorm room startup into a billion-dollar enterprise. Today's board meeting was discussing their latest acquisition, a cybersecurity firm that would expand their government contracts division. When his assistant slipped into the room and whispered that his sons were calling repeatedly, Marcus knew something was wrong. He excused himself immediately. Listening to Jaden's voicemail, Marcus's expression transformed from concern to fury. He called his sons back instantly, putting them on speaker as he gathered his things. "Jaden, Jamal, what's happening?" he asked, signaling to his assistant to have his car brought around. Through tears, the twins explained the situation. How the gate agent had questioned their tickets, treated them with suspicion, and ultimately denied them boarding without explanation, while white passengers their age boarded without issue. "Stay exactly where you are," Marcus instructed, his voice deadly calm. "I'm coming." As his driver navigated through Manhattan traffic toward Newark Airport, Marcus made 3 phone calls. The first was to his assistant, instructing her to reschedule all his meetings and have the company helicopter on standby. The second was to his lawyer, briefly explaining the situation and asking him to meet at the airport. The third call was to Arthur Peterson, CEO of Trans-American Airlines. "Arthur, Marcus Harrington, we have a serious situation at Newark. 2 of your employees have just denied my son's boarding based on what appears to be racial profiling. Marcus, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Save it, Arthur. I'm heading there now. I suggest you start reviewing your discrimination policies before I arrive." 22 minutes later, Marcus strode through the terminal, his tailored suit and commanding presence causing people to step aside. He found his son still at the gate, now being questioned by 2 additional security officers while Sharon and Brett stood nearby. "Jamal! Jaden!" Marcus called out, rushing to embrace them. One of the security officers stepped forward. "Sir, we're conducting an investigation. Please step back." Marcus turned, his 6'3" frame towering over the officer. "I'm Marcus Harrington, their father." Brett scoffed. "Sure you are. We need verification of that." Without a word, Marcus pulled out his driver's license and his Trans-American Airlines Platinum card, along with photos of him with his sons on his phone. "Is this sufficient, or would you like their birth certificates, which list me as their father?" The security officers exchanged uncomfortable glances as they realized who they were dealing with. Sharon stepped forward, her demeanor suddenly accommodating. "Mr. Harrington, there was simply a security protocol that—" "Save it," Marcus interrupted. "I want to know why my sons were denied boarding when their tickets were valid and they had proper identification." "The system flagged their tickets as potentially fraudulent," Sharon began. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened an app, and typed in a code. "That's interesting, because I just accessed the Trans-American Executive Portal, and there's no fraud alert on their tickets. In fact, they were purchased with my Platinum account, which has never had a security flag in the 8 years I've held it." Brett attempted to interject. "Sir, we were just following standard procedure," Marcus finished. "Is it standard procedure to allow white teenagers to board without question while subjecting my black sons to additional screening? Is it standard procedure to ignore valid documentation? Is it standard procedure to humiliate minors without contacting their parents?" The growing commotion had attracted attention. Passengers from nearby gates were watching the confrontation. Several had their phones out, recording. I want the security footage from this gate for the past 2 hours, Marcus demanded. I want the boarding record showing every minor who was allowed on that flight, and I want your employee files, particularly any complaints filed against you. Sharon's face paled. Brett's hand moved instinctively toward his radio. Marcus turned away from them and made another call. This is Marcus Harrington. I'm initiating emergency protocol Alpha 79. Authorization code Harrington 603. Within seconds, his phone chimed with a confirmation message. Marcus looked up. At the departure boards throughout the terminal, one by one, all trans-American flights changed status to delayed. What did you just do? Asked a stunned Brett. Marcus slipped his phone into his pocket. I've initiated a safety protocol that grounds all trans-American flights nationwide. As majority shareholder and board member with executive privileges, I have that authority. The terminal erupted in confused murmurs as passengers noticed the sudden change in flight statuses. Marcus turned to face Sharon and Brett, his voice carrying throughout the now silent gate area. If my black sons can't fly safely on this airline, then no one flies. Now get me your supervisor, the airport director, and a direct line to Trans-American headquarters. We're going to have a very long conversation about racial discrimination at this airline. As security personnel and airline officials began rushing toward the gate, Marcus put his arms around his son's shoulders, pulling them close. It's going to be okay, he assured them quietly. They picked the wrong family to discriminate against today. Chaos erupted across Newark International Airport as the reality of Marcus Harrington's actions spread through the terminal. The electronic departure boards that normally displayed a rainbow of airline logos now showed row after row of trans-American flights with bright red delayed notifications. Gate agents' phones began ringing incessantly. Pilots and flight crews stood confused on jetways. In the control tower, air traffic controllers scrambled to understand why Trans-American had suddenly pulled all clearance requests. What's happening? Why is our flight delayed? Demanded a businessman at Gate B12, where a Trans-American flight to Chicago had been moments from departure. The gate agent, looking panicked, could only respond, "We're experiencing a system-wide delay. We'll update you as soon as we have more information." But information was already spreading through the terminal like wildfire. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation at Gate B23 had posted videos online. Within minutes, Waters Trans-American Grounded was trending on Twitter. Black twin boys racially profiled at Newark. CEO father just shut down entire airline in response. Watching it live. Absolutely wild. Back at Gate B23, airport management had arrived. Thomas Reynolds, the Newark terminal director, approached Marcus with a forced smile. Mr. Harrington, I understand there's been an unfortunate incident, but grounding an entire airline is causing significant disruption. That's exactly the point, Mr. Reynolds, Marcus replied coolly. Discrimination should cause disruption. Now it's affecting everyone, not just my sons. Sharon and Brett had been quickly removed from the gate area, replaced by senior staff who looked terrified as they faced Marcus. Airport security officers hovered nearby, unsure whether to treat Marcus as a troublemaker or a VIP. Marcus's phone rang. It was Arthur Peterson, the CEO of Trans-American. Marcus, for God's sake, what are you doing? We have 16,000 passengers stranded nationwide. The financial damage. Arthur, Marcus interrupted. Is that really your first concern? Not the fact that your employees racially profiled and humiliated my children? I want Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson suspended immediately, pending investigation. I want a full audit of discrimination complaints at Newark, and I want it announced publicly within the hour. You can't just, I own 60% of your company, Arthur. I absolutely can. Make the announcement, or I'll make it for you. Have you ever witnessed such a powerful response to discrimination? If you believe Marcus was right to take such dramatic action to protect his sons, comment number 1. If you think he went too far by disrupting thousands of travelers, comment number 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see how this high-stakes confrontation unfolds. What do you think will happen next as word of this unprecedented airline shutdown spreads across the country? Meanwhile, the situation was escalating. Passengers throughout the terminal were demanding answers. Some expressed solidarity with Marcus after hearing what had happened, while others grew increasingly frustrated with the delays. Marcus turned to his sons. "I'm sorry you had to experience this. No one should be treated this way regardless of their skin color." Jamal looked up at his father. "What's going to happen now, Dad?" "Now," Marcus said, "we make sure this never happens to another child." Marcus's lawyer, Raymond Washington, arrived at the terminal, pushing through the crowd. "Marcus, I came as soon as I could. This is unprecedented." "So was the level of discrimination my sons faced," Marcus replied. "Ray, I need you to begin collecting statements from witnesses and contact the Department of Transportation's Civil Rights Division." As Raymond got to work, Marcus received another call, this one from his pilot. "Mr. Harrington, the helicopter is ready whenever you need it." "Thank you, Steve. I'll need you to take my sons to Atlanta. Their grandparents are expecting them." He turned to Jamal and Jaden. "You'll still make it to Grandma and Grandpa's today, just not on Transamerican." The twins exchanged looks. Jaden spoke first. "Dad, we want to stay with you. This is important." "This could get ugly," Marcus warned. "We know," Jamal said firmly, "but we need to see this through." Marcus nodded, pride momentarily replacing anger. "All right, but stay close." Thomas Reynolds returned, accompanied by a woman in a Transamerican executive uniform. "Mr. Harrington, this is Patricia Delgado, Vice President of Operations for Transamerican. She's been authorized to address your concerns." Patricia stepped forward. "Mr. Harrington, on behalf of Transamerican Airlines, I want to express our deepest—" "Save the corporate apology," Marcus interrupted. "I want action, not words. Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson, what's their status?" Patricia swallowed. "They've been suspended, effective immediately." "Not good enough," Marcus replied. "I want access to their personnel files and any complaints filed against them. I want to review the past 6 months of security footage from this gate, and I want Transamerican's discrimination complaint data for the past 5 years." "Mr. Harrington, that's highly confidential. So is my son's dignity, which your employees violated. Either you provide what I've asked for, or I'll take this straight to the media and the courts." Patricia's phone chimed. She glanced at it, her face paling. "Transamerican stock has dropped 12% in the last hour. It'll drop 50% by closing bell if I don't see meaningful action," Marcus stated flatly. As this confrontation unfolded, Transamerican passengers across the country were feeling the effects. In Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, Miami, and dozens of other cities, thousands of travelers found themselves stranded. Competing airlines began offering special accommodation rates for affected passengers, seizing the opportunity to poach customers. At Transamerican's headquarters in Dallas, emergency meetings were being convened. The company's crisis management team had never faced anything like this, their majority shareholder using his power to ground all flights in protest of racial discrimination. Back in Newark, Marcus had transformed a small conference room near the gate into a command center. His assistant had arrived with additional staff from Harrington Technologies. Laptops were open, phones were ringing, and Marcus was directing operations like a general in battle. "I want statements from everyone who witnessed what happened to my sons," he instructed. "Get our PR team to prepare a press release and have legal draw up discrimination complaints with the FAA, DOT, and EEOC." Outside the conference room, the terminals continued to buzz with activity as news spread. More passengers were filming, posting updates, and sharing their own experiences with discrimination on Transamerican flights. 3 hours into the crisis, Marcus received a call from the White House. The Transportation Secretary was concerned about the nationwide disruption and wanted to understand the situation. "Madam Secretary," Marcus explained, "this is about more than my sons. This is about a pattern of discrimination that affects thousands of travelers of color every day. I'm using my position to shine a light on an issue that's been ignored for too long." As evening approached, Transamerican CEO Arthur Peterson finally arrived at Newark, having flown in on a private jet. His face was ashen as he entered the conference room where Marcus waited. "Marcus," Arthur began, "you've made your point. We're facing a crisis that could bankrupt the airline. For the sake of our employees and passengers, please lift the grounding. Order. Marcus leaned forward. Arthur, you still don't get it. This isn't a negotiating tactic. This is about fundamental human dignity. Your airline discriminated against my children because of their skin color. Now you're facing consequences. What do you want? Arthur asked, defeated. A complete overhaul of how Transamerican handles diversity and discrimination. Independent. Auditors reviewing every complaint. Mandatory training for all staff. Transparent reporting of incidents. And a public acknowledgement of what happened today. Arthur hesitated. That will take time. Then I suggest you get started, Marcus replied, because until I see concrete action, Transamerican stays on the ground. As night fell over Newark Airport, thousands of passengers had been rebooked on other airlines or given hotel vouchers. The financial damage to Transamerican was already in the millions. But for Marcus Harrington and his sons, this was just the beginning of their fight for justice. The morning after the incident, Marcus Harrington had transformed the Transamerican VIP lounge at Newark Airport into a full-scale investigation headquarters. Overnight, his team had brought in computers, printers, and communication equipment. Legal experts and civil rights attorneys worked alongside compliance officers and data analysts. The twins, Jamal and Jaden, sat in a corner, watching their father orchestrate what had become a national story. I want 3 separate teams, Marcus instructed the assembled group. Team 1 focuses on Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson, their employment histories, complaint records, performance reviews. Team 2 examines Transamerican's policies and how they're actually implemented. Team 3 gathers testimonials from other passengers who've experienced discrimination. Marcus's chief legal counsel, Raymond Washington, approached with a tablet. Marcus, we've obtained the security footage from yesterday. You need to see this. The video showed the gate area from multiple angles. Marcus, Jamal, and Jaden watched as the footage confirmed everything the boys had described. The differential. Treatment between them and white passengers. Sharon's visible change in demeanor when approaching the twins. Brett's immediate aggressive stance. Now watch this, Raymond said, forwarding the footage to earlier that day. The video showed Sharon conducting similar additional screenings for 2 other groups, an elderly black couple and a Middle Eastern family. All while white passengers moved through without additional scrutiny. This isn't isolated, Raymond stated. It's a pattern. Marcus nodded grimly. Find more footage. Go back weeks if necessary. Across the room, Amelia Chen, a data analyst from Harrington Technologies, called out, Marcus, I've got Sharon Wilson's employee file. There are 6 passenger complaints for unprofessional behavior in the past year alone. 3 specifically mention racial bias, and they're all marked. Resolved with no further action, added James Lee, another analyst. Signed off by her supervisor, Michael Gaines. Marcus made a note. Add Gaines to our investigation. What about Brett Thompson? 8 complaints in 14 months, Amelia replied. 2 involving excessive force with minority passengers. All dismissed as following security protocols. By mid-morning, Transamerican executives began arriving at the lounge, expecting to negotiate an end to the crisis. They found instead a full-scale investigation that had already uncovered disturbing patterns. Marcus, began Patricia Delgado, the VP of Operations who had met with him the previous day. Our board has authorized me to offer a comprehensive settlement, full apology, compensation for your sons, and not interested. Marcus cut her off. This isn't about money. Show me what you're doing about the systemic issues we're uncovering. Patricia looked uncomfortable. We have policies against discrimination. Policies that aren't enforced, Marcus interrupted again. Did you know Sharon Wilson has had multiple complaints about racial bias? Did you know they were all dismissed without action? Did you know your Newark security team disproportionately targets passengers of color for random screenings? The color drained from Patricia's face. I wasn't aware of the specific numbers. Then you're either incompetent or deliberately ignorant, Marcus replied coldly. Neither is acceptable for someone in your position. By midday, Marcus's team had interviewed 12 minority passengers who had experienced similar treatment at Newark's Trans-American gates. Their stories were strikingly similar: unexplained security concerns, additional screenings, questioned documentation, all while white passengers moved through efficiently. One of Marcus's civil rights attorneys, Sofia Rodriguez, compiled the testimonials. "Marcus, these aren't isolated incidents. This is textbook systemic discrimination. I've litigated cases like this before, but rarely with such clear evidence." Meanwhile, Trans-American's stock continued to plummet. Financial analysts were predicting losses exceeding $100 million for each day. The airline remained grounded. Business travelers were canceling corporate accounts. The airline's reputation was in freefall. Arthur Peterson, Trans-American's CEO, arrived again at Newark, this time with the company's entire executive leadership team and board chair, William Montgomery. Their faces were grim as they entered the lounge. "Marcus," Arthur began, "this has gone far enough. You've made your point. The entire airline industry is watching. Our shareholders are panicking. Please, lift the grounding order, and let's resolve this reasonably." Marcus looked up from a report he was reviewing. "Arthur, 24 hours ago, your employees humiliated my children because of their skin color. In the time since, we've uncovered evidence suggesting this is a widespread problem throughout your airline. Your first concern was the financial impact, not the discrimination. So no, I haven't made my point yet." William Montgomery, a 70-year-old white man who had been with Trans-American since its founding, stepped forward. "Mr. Harrington, with all due respect, you're using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. Yes, there may have been an unfortunate incident with your sons, but grounding an entire airline affects thousands of innocent people." Marcus's expression hardened. "Mr. Montgomery, that unfortunate incident is called racial discrimination, and it's illegal. As for affecting innocent people, my sons were innocent. Every person of color who's been profiled by your airline was innocent. Sometimes it takes a sledgehammer to fix a foundation that's cracked to its core." Raymond approached with another tablet. "Marcus, you need to see this. We found internal emails discussing discrimination complaints from last year. The emails, exchanged between middle and upper management, showed a disturbing pattern. Complaints about racial bias were consistently downplayed. One email from a regional director read, 'These allegations are bad for public image. Handle internally, minimize paper trail, standard denial language.'" Marcus handed the tablet to Arthur and William. "Still think it's just a fly, gentlemen?" By late afternoon, the investigation had expanded further. Harrington Technologies' cybersecurity experts had gained authorized access to Trans-American's complaint database, revealing hundreds of discrimination allegations across the country, most closed with no action. As this evidence mounted, Marcus called his sons to his temporary office within the lounge. "Jamal, Jaden, I want you to know how proud I am of you both," he said. "You handled yourselves with dignity yesterday in a situation where you were treated without any." "Are we in trouble, Dad?" Jaden asked. "For causing all this?" Marcus knelt to look his sons in the eyes. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. You didn't cause this. The people who discriminated against you caused this. The system that allowed it to happen caused this. Never, ever think that standing up for your dignity is causing trouble." Jamal looked at the bustling room of investigators and attorneys. "What happens next, Dad?" "Next," Marcus said, "we make sure Trans-American changes, truly changes, so this doesn't happen to anyone else." That evening, Marcus called another meeting with Trans-American's leadership. This time, he presented them with a comprehensive report of the day's findings. "Gentlemen, ladies," Marcus began, "in just 24 hours, we found enough evidence of systematic discrimination to support multiple class action lawsuits, federal civil rights investigations, and regulatory penalties. Your airline has a cancer growing inside it." The executives shifted uncomfortably as Marcus continued. "I'm not interested in destroying Trans-American. I'm interested in transforming it. Tomorrow morning, I'll present you with a comprehensive reform plan. Either you accept it in its entirety, or I'll maintain the grounding, initiate legal proceedings, and use my shareholder position to replace this entire leadership team. As the executives filed out, Arthur Peterson lingered behind. Marcus, off the record, I had no idea it was this bad. That's the problem, Arthur, Marcus replied. You should have known. It was your responsibility to know. Night fell on Newark Airport, where hundreds of trans-American employees now faced uncertain futures. As news of the investigation spread, many came forward with their own stories. Flight attendants who had reported racist incidents only to be ignored, baggage handlers who had witnessed profiling, gate agents who had been trained to scrutinize certain passengers more carefully than others. The story had grown far beyond one incident with two black teenagers. It had exposed a culture of bias that permeated one of America's largest airlines, and Marcus Harrington was determined to root it out completely. By the third day of what the media had dubbed the Trans-American Standoff, the story had transcended business news to become a national conversation about race, power, and accountability. Morning shows, cable news networks, and social media platforms were dominated by debates about Marcus Harrington's unprecedented response to his son's treatment. Good morning, America. Our top story continues to be the nationwide grounding of Trans-American Airlines by tech billionaire Marcus Harrington after his black teenage sons were allegedly denied boarding due to racial profiling, announced a CNN anchor. The hashtag #JaiShGroundedForJustice had amassed over 2 million posts across social media platforms. Videos of the original confrontation at Newark Airport had been viewed tens of millions of times. Public reaction was sharply divided. Many praised Marcus for using his position to force accountability for discrimination that ordinary people had no power to fight. Others criticized him for what they deemed an excessive response that affected innocent travelers. What makes this story so powerful, explained a social commentator on MSNBC, is that it demonstrates how even wealth and status don't shield Black Americans from racism. If the children of a billionaire can be profiled this way, imagine what happens to those without resources. Fox News took a different angle. While discrimination is never acceptable, is one man's vendetta worth disrupting the entire national air transport system? Many are calling Harrington's actions corporate terrorism. Marcus had anticipated the media frenzy and assembled a skilled communications team. Rather than hiding, he decided to address the public directly. He agreed to an exclusive interview with Christiane Amanpour, known for her tough but fair questioning. Mr. Harrington, Amanpour began. Some would say you're using your wealth and power to wage a personal battle. How do you respond? Marcus sat comfortably beside his sons who had insisted on joining the interview. Christiane, if wealth and power can't be used to fight injustice, then what good are they? My sons experience something that thousands of travelers of color experience every day. The difference is, I have the means to demand accountability. But grounding an entire airline, affecting thousands of travelers who had nothing to do with the incident? Sometimes, Marcus replied, systems only change when those with privilege feel the impact. For too long, discrimination has only hurt the discriminated against. Now everyone feels it. That creates pressure for real change. Jamal spoke up. Ms. Amanpour, before this happened, I thought being my father's son would protect me from racism. Now I understand that's not how it works. Jaden added, we just wanted to visit our grandparents. We didn't do anything wrong. Their poised, articulate responses humanized the story for millions of viewers, shifting public opinion further in their favor. Meanwhile, competing airlines were capitalizing on Trans-American's crisis. Delta, United, and American all issued statements reaffirming their commitment to anti-discrimination policies. Several announced new diversity training initiatives, clearly trying to distance themselves from Trans-American's troubles. We're seeing a domino effect across the industry, noted a transportation analyst on Bloomberg TV. Every airline is suddenly examining their practices, knowing they could be next under the microscope. Not all coverage was sympathetic to the Harringtons. Right-wing media outlets began digging for dirt, questioning Marcus's business practices, and even suggesting the twins had misbehaved at the gate. A claim quickly disproven by the security footage. One particularly ugly segment on a conservative talk show suggested the whole incident was a publicity stunt. Harrington Technologies. Has government contracts up for renewal. Convenient time to play the race card, isn't it? Marcus had anticipated this too. His team released a statement. Attempts to discredit the Harrington family or diminish the reality of the discrimination they faced reflect exactly the kind of bias we're fighting against. The evidence speaks for itself. The flight attendants. Union issued a carefully worded statement supporting both the fight against discrimination and their members who were now facing financial hardship due to the grounding. We stand against bias in all forms while also advocating for our members who had no part in this incident. By mid-afternoon, the story took another turn when the civil rights attorney Ben Crump announced he was representing 6 other families who claimed similar discrimination by Trans-American. The Harrington case has broken the dam. People are no longer afraid to come forward with their experiences. Social media became a platform for thousands to share their own stories of discrimination while traveling. Black doctors, lawyers, executives, and everyday travelers recounted being questioned, searched, and humiliated, despite having valid tickets and documentation. Flying while black should not be a different experience than flying while white, wrote one viral tweet that was shared over 100,000 times. As evening approached, Trans-American's CEO Arthur Peterson finally addressed the public in a press conference. His statement, clearly crafted by crisis management experts, acknowledged serious concerns about the incident while stopping short of admitting systematic discrimination. Trans-American Airlines is committed to treating all passengers with dignity and respect. We are taking the allegations regarding the Harrington family extremely seriously and conducting a thorough investigation. We ask for patience as we work to resolve this situation. The response was immediately criticized as inadequate. Marcus issued a one-sentence statement in reply. Acknowledgement without accountability is just more corporate theater. By nightfall, the financial damage to Trans-American had grown severe. The stock had fallen nearly 40%. Booking sites had removed Trans-American flights from their default search results. Corporate clients were publicly canceling their contracts. The airline's board of directors convened an emergency meeting, with some members joining virtually. Inside sources reported heated debates about whether to capitulate to Marcus's demands or fight back legally to end the grounding. At Newark Airport, where it had all begun, a remarkable scene unfolded. Hundreds of people, travelers, activists, and ordinary citizens gathered for an impromptu rally in support of the Harringtons. They carried signs reading, "Fly fair or don't fly," and "Justice before profits." Marcus and his sons watched the coverage from their hotel suite, moved by the outpouring of support. "Dad," Jamal said quietly, "I never thought our trip to see Grandma and Grandpa would turn into all this." Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Sometimes standing up for what's right creates ripples we never expected. What happened to you was wrong, but the change it might create could help thousands of others." As day 3 of the crisis came to a close, it was clear that what had begun as a single incident of discrimination had evolved into a national reckoning about race, corporate responsibility, and the power of individual action to create systemic change. And for Trans-American Airlines, the most difficult decisions still lay ahead. Have you ever wondered what shapes a person who's willing to stand alone against a corporate giant? If you believe family history plays a crucial role in forming such courage, comment number 1. If you think it's more about individual character, comment number 2. Hit the like button if you're inspired by the Harrington family's stand against injustice, and subscribe to follow their remarkable journey. Now let's discover the foundations that built Marcus Harrington's unwavering resolve. Long before Marcus Harrington became a tech billionaire capable of grounding an airline with a phone call, he was just a skinny kid from South Chicago with big dreams and a mother who refused to let him settle for less. LaTonya Harrington raised Marcus alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Bronzeville, working double shifts as a hospital nurse to provide for her son. Marcus's earliest memories were of watching his mother study medical textbooks at their kitchen table after putting him to bed, determined to advance from LPN to RN to increase their opportunities. "Education is the one thing they can never take from you," she would tell him. "Your mind is your most powerful asset." When Marcus showed an early aptitude for mathematics and computers, LaTonya scraped together enough money to buy him a second-hand computer. By age 12, he was coding simple, programs. By 15, he was fixing computers for neighbors to earn extra money. His academic excellence earned him a scholarship to MIT, making him the first in his family to attend college. The transition from South Chicago to Cambridge, Massachusetts was jarring. For the first time, Marcus found himself in environments where he was often the only black person in the room. "I remember my first advanced programming class," Marcus told his sons years later. "The professor asked a question, and I raised my hand with the answer. He looked right past me, even though I was the only one with my hand up. I had to say the answer out loud, unrequested, before he would acknowledge me." These microaggressions continued throughout his college years. Classmates assumed he was there on athletic scholarship rather than academic merit. Security guards followed him in the campus bookstore. Professors expressed surprise at his articulate presentations. Rather than being defeated by these experiences, Marcus channeled his frustration into excellence. He graduated summa cum laude and immediately began developing the encryption software that would eventually become the foundation of Harrington Technologies. Success came neither quickly nor easily. Venture capitalists were reluctant to invest in a young black entrepreneur without connections. One memorable rejection came after a pitch where Marcus was told his idea was impressive, but they were looking for founders with a more established background. He bootstrapped his company from a small apartment, living on ramen noodles and determination. His breakthrough came when a mid-sized bank took a chance on his encryption software, which proved so effective that larger institutions soon came calling. By 30, Marcus had built Harrington Technologies into a respected name in cybersecurity. By 35, he was a millionaire. But money didn't shield him from racism. In some ways, it just changed its form. There was the time a luxury car dealership assumed he was a basketball player rather than a tech CEO. The high-end restaurant that seated him near the kitchen despite empty tables by the windows. The real estate agent who tried to steer him away from certain neighborhoods. It was during this period that Marcus met Amara Johnson, a brilliant neurosurgeon who understood his experiences all too well. Born to Nigerian immigrants who emphasized education above all else, Amara had navigated her own path through predominantly white institutions. "The first time I assisted in surgery," she told Marcus on their third date, "the patient asked if I was there to clean the room. The attending physician said nothing. I had to explain that I was, in fact, part of the surgical team." Their shared experiences of having to be twice as good to get half as far created an immediate bond. They married within a year, each appreciating the other's drive, intelligence, and understanding of the complex realities of being black professionals in America. When they decided to have children, they had serious conversations about what it would mean to raise black children in a country where racism remained a daily reality. "I was terrified," Amara admitted in a family therapy session years later. Not of having children, but of bringing black children into a world that would see their skin before seeing their humanity. They prepared methodically, as they did everything else. They read books on raising confident black children. They joined support groups for upper-middle-class black families. They carefully selected diverse schools and neighborhoods. When the twins were born, identical boys they named Jamal and Jaden, Marcus and Amara were determined to give them both privilege and perspective. "We never wanted them to be defined by limitations," Marcus explained to a close friend. "But we also never wanted them to be blindsided by racism the way we were." From an early age, the Harringtons had what they called reality conversations with their sons. They explained that some people might treat them differently because of their skin color. They role-played scenarios involving police interactions. They discussed how to respond to both overt racism and subtle bias. "It's the talk that every black parent has with their children," Amara explained to a colleague who asked why they would burden young children with such heavy topics. "Except we have it repeatedly, updating it as they grow, because the stakes are too high not to." Despite their wealth and status, the Harringtons experienced numerous incidents that reminded them of their vulnerability. There was the time the family was shopping in an upscale department store, and security followed the twins while ignoring white children who were being far more disruptive. There was the school administrator who suggested the boys might be more comfortable in less advanced classes despite their excellent grades. There was the neighbor who called police when Marcus was locked out of his own home and attempting to enter through a window. Amara's prestigious hospital position didn't prevent patients from sometimes mistaking her for a nurse or orderly. Marcus's company success didn't stop people from expressing surprise when they discovered he was the founder and CEO rather than an employee. The twins' prestigious private school, Bradford Academy, provided excellent education, but also frequent reminders of their difference. When Jamal was 11, a classmate told him he was pretty smart for a black kid. When Jaden excelled in mathematics, a teacher suggested he might have a natural aptitude for rhythm and counting. Marcus and Amara addressed each incident head-on, always working with the twins to process their feelings while advocating for accountability. Never let anyone's perception of you become your reality, became a family mantra. When the twins turned 13, Marcus and Amara decided it was important for them to spend significant time with their grandparents in Atlanta. LaTonya Harrington had retired there, living near Amara's parents, the Johnsons, who had both been civil rights activists in their youth. "Your grandparents fought battles so we could have opportunities," Marcus explained to his sons. "Now we fight battles so you can have even more. Someday, you'll do the same for your children." These visits to Atlanta became a crucial connection to their heritage. The twins learned family history, including stories of their great-grandfather, who had marched with Dr. King, and their great-grandmother, who had been one of the first black teachers in her county after desegregation. "You come from people who never back down from fighting for what's right," LaTonya told her grandsons during one summer visit. "Never forget that." Now, as Marcus watched his sons handle themselves with dignity throughout the Trans-American crisis, he saw the culmination of years of careful parenting, honest conversations, and deliberate preparation. Amara had flown back from a medical conference in Switzerland the moment she heard what had happened. When she arrived at their hotel suite in Newark, she embraced the twins fiercely before turning to Marcus. "You did exactly what we always said we would do," she said. "You used your position to demand the respect they deserve." As the family gathered in their suite that evening, the twins' grandparents joined via video call from Atlanta. "I'm so proud of you boys," LaTonya said, her voice firm despite her 80 years. "And Marcus, you're doing what needs to be done. Don't let them minimize this." Amara's father, Dr. Johnson, nodded in agreement. "In my day, we boycotted buses. You're grounding planes. Different tactics, same fight." Later that night, after the twins had gone to bed, Marcus and Amara sat together reviewing the day's developments. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Marcus asked quietly. "This is bigger than I expected." Amara took his hand. "Remember what we always told the boys? If not us, then who? If not now, then when? We have the platform and the power to make real change. That makes it our responsibility." Marcus nodded, drawing strength from the family legacy that had brought them to this moment. From his mother's late-night studies at the kitchen table, to his own struggles for recognition, to their careful preparation of the twins for a world that wouldn't always see their value. "Tomorrow," he said, "we push for real change, not just apologies." What they didn't know was that the fight was about to become even more challenging as Trans-American's board prepared to push back against the man who had brought their airline to a standstill. The fourth day of the crisis dawned with a dramatic escalation. Marcus Harrington arrived at his makeshift headquarters in the Newark Airport VIP lounge to find an official-looking document waiting for him. It was a notice of an emergency Trans-American board meeting scheduled for noon, with a single agenda item: vote on removal of Marcus Harrington from Board of Directors for actions detrimental to company interests. Raymond Washington, Marcus's attorney, reviewed the document with a frown. "They're trying to outmaneuver you. If they remove you from the board, they'll argue you no longer have authority to maintain the grounding order." Marcus nodded calmly. "I expected this. It won't work, but it shows they're still not taking the underlying issue seriously." Just as they were discussing strategy, Marcus's phone buzzed with an urgent news alert. Trans-American had filed for an emergency injunction in federal court to force resumption of flights, arguing that Marcus's actions constituted improper use of corporate authority for personal grievances. "They're coming at us from multiple angles," Raymond observed. "Good. Marcus replied, surprising his attorney. It means they're scared. When people get scared, they make mistakes. Marcus called an immediate meeting with his expanding team of attorneys, PR specialists, and investigators. The VIP lounge now resembled a war room, with multiple workstations, evidence boards, and a constant flow of information. Trans-American is trying to regain control through legal channels, Marcus Huey explained to the assembled group. They still don't understand that this isn't about control. It's about accountability. Let's respond accordingly. Within an hour, Marcus had his counter-strategy in motion. First, his legal team filed opposition to the injunction, including the mounting evidence of systemic discrimination they'd uncovered. Second, he issued a public statement revealing that he was considering selling his 60% ownership stake to Trans-American's largest competitor, sending the already battered stock into further decline. Mr. Harrington, a CNBC reporter asked during a hastily arranged press conference, "Are you really willing to potentially destroy an entire airline over this incident?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. This isn't about one incident. This is about a pattern of discrimination that Trans-American has ignored for years. And I'm not destroying anything. I'm forcing transformation. Companies that can't operate without discrimination deserve to fail. Back at Trans-American headquarters in Dallas, panic was setting in. The company's legal team warned that Marcus's evidence of systematic discrimination could trigger not just public relations problems, but serious regulatory consequences and class action lawsuits. Arthur Peterson, the CEO, convened his executive team. "We need to end this now. The financial damage is already severe. Another day of this and we're looking at potential bankruptcy." William Montgomery, the board chair, disagreed. "If we cave to his demands, we're admitting guilt. That opens us to massive liability. We need to fight this." The division among Trans-American leadership was mirrored throughout the company. At airports across the country, Trans-American employees were taking sides. Some, particularly employees of color, began staging walkouts in solidarity with the Harringtons. Others, worried about their jobs, blamed Marcus for putting their livelihoods at risk. At New York's JFK Airport, a group of Trans-American flight attendants held an impromptu press conference. "We've reported discriminatory treatment of passengers for years," explained Tasha Williams, a 20-year veteran flight attendant. "Those reports disappeared into a black hole. Mr. Harrington is finally forcing the company to address what many of us have witnessed firsthand." The situation escalated further when an anonymous Trans-American employee leaked years of internal discrimination complaint data to the New York Times. The database revealed over 300 formal complaints of racial bias in the past 5 years alone, with fewer than 10% resulting in any disciplinary action. The fallout was immediate. 3 senior Trans-American executives resigned within hours of the leak. The Department of Transportation announced a formal investigation into the airline's compliance with civil rights regulations. The FAA began reviewing whether Trans-American's handling of discrimination complaints constituted a violation of their operating license requirements. Other airlines watched nervously, knowing they could be next under the microscope. Delta, United, and American all announced independent audits of their own discrimination complaint procedures, trying to get ahead of potential scrutiny. Meanwhile, Marcus was facing challenges of his own. His public stand had made him and his family targets. The twins began receiving hate mail and death threats on their social media accounts. Security experts from Harrington Technologies were deployed to protect the family. Marcus received word that several powerful Trans-American board members were hiring private investigators to dig into his past, looking for anything that might discredit him. "They're going to come after you personally," Raymond warned. "Are you prepared for that?" "They can investigate all they want," Marcus replied. "I've nothing to hide. And if they think they can intimidate me into backing down, they don't understand what's at stake here." That afternoon, Trans-American made their most aggressive move yet. Arthur Peterson held a press conference announcing a $100 million settlement offer to the Harrington family to resolve the unfortunate incident and allow the airline to resume operations serving the American public. Marcus didn't even dignify the offer with a direct response. Instead, he released a simple statement. This was never about money. It's about transforming a discriminatory system. No amount of financial compensation will end this standoff. Only meaningful, structural change. As the board meeting approached, Marcus received surprising support from an unexpected quarter. 15 minority shareholders of Transamerican filed an emergency motion supporting Marcus's position, arguing that the systematic discrimination represented a long-term business risk that the current leadership had failed to address. The noon board meeting, conducted virtually, was tense from the start. William Montgomery opened by formally moving for Marcus's removal, citing actions harmful to the company's interests. When his turn came to speak, Marcus was calm but forceful. Gentlemen, ladies, you're making a critical mistake. You see this as a PR problem to manage. I see it as a moral failure that requires correction. Remove me if you wish, but know that I will then immediately announce my intention to sell my majority stake to the highest bidder, likely one of our competitors. You'll have won the battle and lost the company. The threat was not idle. 3 competing airlines had already quietly reached out to Marcus's team, sensing an opportunity to acquire a weakened rival. The vote to remove Marcus failed, with only Montgomery and 2 allies voting in favor. The remaining board members, seeing the writing on the wall, were unwilling to risk the corporate suicide that forcing Marcus out would represent. As evening approached on the 4th day of the crisis, Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson, the employees who had initially denied the twins boarding, gave an exclusive interview to a right-leaning news network. They portrayed themselves as victims of corporate politics, insisting they had simply followed protocols. I have nothing against those boys, Sharon claimed, her voice breaking for the cameras. But their tickets were flagged in our system. I was just doing my job. Brett nodded, in agreement. Security doesn't see color. We see threats and non-threats, that's it. The interview backfired spectacularly. Viewers quickly noted inconsistencies in their statements. Sharon claimed the tickets were flagged by the system, but earlier evidence had shown no such flags existed. Brett's claim that security doesn't see color was contradicted by his own record of disproportionately stopping passengers of color. Social media dissected the interview mercilessly, with just lying Sharon trending within hours. More damaging still, former Transamerican employees began coming forward with stories about both Sharon and Brett, describing a pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been reported but never addressed. By nightfall, the tide had decisively turned. A coalition of civil rights organizations announced plans for nationwide protests at Transamerican ticket counters. Corporate clients publicly canceled their contracts with the airline. The company's credit rating was downgraded twice in a single day. In a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation, Arthur Peterson requested a private meeting with Marcus away from lawyers and media. They met in a secure conference room at a neutral location. Arthur looked like he hadn't slept in days. Marcus, he began, you've made your point. The company is bleeding out. Thousands of employees, most of whom had nothing to do with what happened to your sons, are at risk of losing their jobs. What will it take to end this? Marcus slid a document across the table. This is a comprehensive reform plan developed by civil rights experts and airline industry specialists. It includes mandatory bias training, hiring overhauls, transparent complaint procedures, and independent oversight. Implemented in its entirety, and I'll lift the grounding order. Arthur skimmed the document, his face paling. Marcus, this would cost tens of millions to implement. The shareholders would revolt. The shareholders are already revolting, Marcus pointed out. Your stock has lost over 50% of its value. You're facing regulatory investigations and class action lawsuits. This plan is your lifeline, not your burden. I'll need board approval, Arthur hedged. Then get it, Marcus replied simply. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, I begin entertaining purchase offers for my shares. As Marcus left the meeting, he received a call from Amara. The family had been moved to a secure location due to the increasing threats. The boys want to know how much longer this will go on, she said. Tell them not much longer, Marcus replied. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. What he didn't tell her was that he was facing the most difficult decision of his career. whether to destroy an airline that had discriminated against his children or transform it into a model for the industry. The choice would affect not just his family, but thousands of employees and millions of passengers. And time was running out. As the crisis entered its fifth day, Trans-American Airlines stood at the brink of financial collapse. The company's stock had plummeted to historic lows. Credit agencies had downgraded its debt to junk status. Rival airlines were circling like vultures, preparing to divide Trans-American's routes and assets if it failed. More significantly, the human toll was mounting. Over 20,000 employees faced uncertain futures. Passengers with loyalty accounts worried about their accumulated miles. Communities that depended on Trans-American as their primary air service connection feared isolation. Marcus Harrington arrived at his command center in the Newark airport, VIP lounge early, reviewing the latest reports from his investigation teams. The evidence of systematic discrimination throughout Trans-American had grown overwhelming. What had begun with his son's experience had uncovered a corporate culture that routinely dismissed, downplayed, and covered up racial bias. The interview with Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson the previous evening had unexpectedly become a turning point. Their defensive, contradictory statements had backfired dramatically, triggering an avalanche of testimonials from current and former Trans-American employees. Lisa Chen, a former customer service supervisor, revealed that she had been reprimanded for reporting discriminatory behavior. "I was told to focus on operational efficiency rather than social issues," she explained in a viral social media post. James Rodriguez, a former security trainer, described how profiling was implicitly encouraged despite official policies against it. "We were told to look for behavioral indicators that in practice meant targeting certain demographics." Most damaging was the testimony of Michael Gaines, Sharon's supervisor, who had approved her return to work after previous complaints. Facing potential legal liability himself, Gaines admitted to investigators that regional management had pressured him to resolve discrimination complaints quickly and quietly. "The directive was clear," Gaines stated in a sworn affidavit. "Handle these issues internally. Don't create paper trails that could become legal liabilities." As these revelations spread, the Department of Transportation expanded its investigation. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department announced its own inquiry. What had begun as one family's stand against discrimination had evolved into a comprehensive federal investigation of the entire airline industry's practices. At 11 o'clock, Marcus received word that the Trans-American Board had convened an emergency meeting to discuss his reform proposal. His sources inside the company reported heated debates between those who wanted to accept the reforms and those who still believed they could outlast Marcus's resolve. While waiting for the board's decision, Marcus met with the twins and Amara in a private corner of the lounge. After days in the spotlight, the family needed a moment together. "How are you boys holding up?" Marcus asked his sons. "We're okay, Dad," Jamal replied. "But everyone at school is talking about it. Some kids are saying you're destroying the airline because of us." Marcus sat down beside them. "Listen to me. None of this is because of you. It's because of what was done to you. There's a big difference." "But what about all the people who might lose their jobs?" Jaden asked, the concern evident in his voice. The question struck Marcus deeply. He had been so focused on fighting the discrimination that he hadn't fully considered how his sons might be processing the broader implications. "That's a really important question," Marcus acknowledged. "And it shows your compassion. Here's the truth. I don't want anyone to lose their job. What I want is for Trans-American to become a company where what happened to you couldn't happen to anyone else." "Can't you just make them apologize and change their rules?" Jamal suggested. "Maybe they've learned their lesson now." Marcus exchanged glances with Amara, impressed by their son's desire for resolution rather than retribution. "An apology without change is just manipulation," Amara explained gently. "But your father's goal isn't to punish the airline, it's to transform it." The conversation gave Marcus a moment of clarity. From the beginning, he had wielded his power to demand justice for his sons. But true justice wasn't about punishment, it was about transformation. At noon, Marcus received word that Arthur Peterson, and William Montgomery were requesting a meeting, this time with the twins present. After conferring with Amara and ensuring the boys were comfortable with the idea, Marcus agreed. The meeting took place in a private conference room. Arthur and William entered, looking grave. To Marcus's surprise, they were accompanied by Janet Reynolds, Transamerican's newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer, a position that hadn't existed 5 days earlier. Arthur spoke first, addressing not Marcus, but the twins. Jamal, Jaden, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced at our airline. It was wrong, inexcusable, and reflective of problems we failed to address. No child, no person, should ever be treated differently because of their race. William Montgomery, the board chair who had initially dismissed the incident as minor, spoke next. Young men, I owe you an apology as well. I failed to understand the seriousness of what happened to you. In doing so, I was part of the problem. Marcus watched his sons carefully, ready to intervene if they seemed uncomfortable, but the twins sat tall, listening respectfully. Janet Reynolds then presented a comprehensive overview of the reforms Transamerican was preparing to implement. They went beyond even what Marcus had demanded. We're establishing an independent oversight committee with representatives from civil rights organizations. We're implementing mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff. We're overhauling our hiring practices to increase diversity at all levels, and we're creating a transparent complaint process with public reporting of outcomes. Most significantly, she announced that Transamerican would fund an industry-wide initiative to address discrimination in air travel, inviting other airlines to join in creating unified standards and accountability measures. Mr. Harrington, Arthur concluded, our board has unanimously approved these reforms. We're not just trying to end this crisis. We're committed to becoming the industry leader in equitable treatment for all passengers. Marcus studied the executives carefully, looking for signs of insincerity. Instead, he saw what appeared to be genuine recognition of the need for change. These are excellent first steps, Marcus acknowledged. But implementation matters more than promises. I'll need verification mechanisms and regular reporting. We've anticipated that, Janet replied, presenting another document outlining specific metrics, timelines, and accountability measures. Marcus turned to his sons. Jamal, Jaden, what do you think? This is about what happened to you. Your voices matter here. The twins conferred quietly. Then Jamal spoke. We think they should get a chance to fix things. Everyone deserves a chance to do better. Jaden nodded in agreement. But they need to help other people who were discriminated against too, not just us. Marcus felt a surge of pride in his son's wisdom and compassion. They weren't seeking vengeance, but genuine change. Gentlemen, Marcus addressed the executives, my sons have shown more wisdom and grace than many adults would in this situation. I agree with their assessment. He outlined his conditions. The reforms would be implemented with independent verification. Sharon and Brett would not be simply fired, but required to undergo extensive education about bias and its impacts. And Transamerican would establish a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing careers in aviation. Meet these conditions, Marcus concluded, and I'll lift the grounding order immediately. Arthur extended his hand. We accept all conditions. William, who days earlier had dismissed the incident as minor, added, Mr. Harrington, you've done something remarkable here. You've forced not just our airline but our entire industry to confront issues we've ignored for too long. The agreement was formalized within the hour. At 2 o'clock, Marcus stood before a bank of media cameras in the main terminal at Newark Airport, flanked by his family and Transamerican executives. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning, he announced. Transamerican Airlines has committed to comprehensive reforms that will address the systematic discrimination my sons and countless others have experienced. Effective immediately, I am lifting the grounding order and allowing flights to resume. Arthur Peterson stepped forward next. We thank the Harrington family for their courage in holding us accountable. Transamerican is committed to becoming a model for equity and inclusion in the airline industry. We are resuming operations with a renewed commitment to ensuring every passenger is treated with dignity and respect. As the press conference concluded, a spontaneous applause broke out in the terminal. Passengers, airport workers, and even some trans-American employees recognized they were witnessing a rare moment of corporate accountability. That evening, as trans-American planes began taking to the skies again, Marcus sat with his family in the privacy of their hotel suite. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked Amara quietly, while the twins were engrossed in a video game. "You turned a moment of injustice into a movement for change," she replied. "That's always the right thing." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I had the power to destroy an airline. Instead, we're transforming it." "That's the difference between revenge and justice," Amara said. "Revenge tears down, justice builds up." As they watched the news coverage of trans-American flights resuming nationwide, Marcus realized that what had begun as a father's righteous anger had evolved into something more significant, a template for how power and privilege could be used to create lasting change. The real work, he knew, was just beginning. 1 month after trans-American flights resumed operations, Marcus Harrington stood at a podium in the company's Dallas headquarters. Behind him hung a new corporate banner: "Every passenger, every journey, equal respect." The audience included trans-American executives, employees, civil rights leaders, and industry regulators. 30 days ago, Marcus began, my sons were denied boarding because of the color of their skin. Today, I'm proud to report that Trans-American has not only implemented the promised reforms, but has exceeded our expectations in several key areas. The transformation had been remarkable by any standard. The airline had established the industry's most comprehensive anti-bias protocols, including a blind customer service system that removed racial identifiers from passenger records body, cameras for all security personnel with footage regularly reviewed by independent auditors, a transparent complaint system with public reporting of incidents and resolutions, mandatory quarterly bias training for all customer-facing staff, a diverse hiring initiative that had already increased minority representation in leadership positions by 20%. Arthur Peterson, who had initially resisted Marcus's demands, now stood beside him as a committed ally. What began as a crisis has become an opportunity, Arthur acknowledged. Our company is stronger, fairer, and more competitive because of these changes. The statistics supported his claim. After initial drop in bookings following the crisis, Trans-American was now seeing passenger numbers exceed pre-incident levels. Their customer satisfaction scores had improved dramatically. Perhaps most surprisingly, employee morale had risen as workers embraced the more equitable corporate culture. Sharon Wilson and Brett Thompson, the employees who had denied the twins boarding, had faced consequences for their actions. Rather than simply being fired, however, they had been required to undergo extensive education on racial bias and its impacts. Sharon had been particularly transformed by the experience. "I never saw myself as racist," she explained in a recent interview. "But I've come to understand how implicit bias affected my actions. I judged those boys based on stereotypes I didn't even realize I held." Sharon had requested to meet with the Harrington family to apologize personally. The meeting, which took place under Marcus's conditions, became an unexpected moment of healing. "I'm truly sorry for how I treated you," Sharon told Jamal and Jaden, her voice breaking. "You deserved better. I'm working every day to be better." The twins, displaying maturity beyond their years, accepted her apology with grace. "Everyone makes mistakes," Jaden told her. "What matters is learning from them." Beyond Trans-American, the impact of the Harrington stand had rippled throughout the transportation industry. The Department of Transportation had adopted new anti-discrimination standards based largely on the reforms implemented at Trans-American. Other airlines had proactively established similar protocols, fearing both regulatory consequences and public backlash if they failed to address potential discrimination. Marcus had established the Air Travel Equality Foundation, an independent watchdog organization funded by a portion of the settlement Trans-American had paid to resolve potential legal claims. The foundation monitored discrimination complaints across all airlines and advocated for policy changes where needed. The twins had become reluctant celebrities and youth advocates for equality. Schools across the country invited them to share their experience. Their message was consistently one of empowerment rather than victimhood. When something unfair happens to you, Jamal told a group of middle school students in Chicago, you have choices. You can stay quiet, you can get angry, or you can channel that energy into creating change. Amara Harrington had taken her own experience as a Black woman in medicine and launched an initiative addressing racial bias in healthcare. What happened to our sons at the airport happens to patients of color in hospitals every day, she explained. Symptoms dismissed, pain undertreated, concerns ignored. Marcus had used his position on Transamerican's board to establish a scholarship program for minority students pursuing careers in aviation. The first class of 20 scholarship recipients had already begun their training, with mentorship from airline executives and pilots. For the Harrington family, the most meaningful moment came exactly 1 year after the incident. Jamal and Jaden again prepared to visit their grandparents in Atlanta, this time with their parents accompanying them. At Newark Airport, they approached the Transamerican Gate with a mixture of apprehension and determination. The gate area had been physically redesigned as part of the company's reforms, with a more open layout that made all interactions visible to other passengers and cameras. The gate agent, part of Transamerican's newly diverse staff, checked their documentation efficiently and respectfully. "You're all set, gentlemen," she told the twins with a genuine smile. "Have a wonderful flight." As they boarded, the flight attendant greeting passengers was none other than Sharon Wilson, who had requested transfer to a different position where she could demonstrate her commitment to treating all passengers with dignity. "Welcome aboard," she said simply, making eye contact with each family member. The moment carried no dramatic tension, no special recognition, and that normalcy was precisely the point. The Harrington twins were being treated like any other passengers, which was all they had wanted from the beginning. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Marcus looked at his sons, then at Amara. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "Look around," Amara replied, gesturing to the diverse flight crew, the new inclusive signage, the respectful treatment they had received. Systemic change never comes easily, but yes, it was worth it. The twins, now 15, had grown noticeably in the year since the incident, not just physically but in confidence and purpose. "Dad," Jamal said as the plane accelerated down the runway, "remember when you told us that sometimes you have to stand up not just for yourself but for everyone who comes after you?" Marcus nodded. "I think we understand that better now," Jaden finished. As the plane lifted into the clear blue sky, Marcus reflected on the journey of the past year. What had begun as a painful incident of discrimination had catalyzed meaningful change, not through violence or vengeance, but through the strategic use of power, coupled with a commitment to justice rather than punishment. The true measure of their success wasn't in policies or protocols, though those were important. It was in the knowledge that the next Black children who approached a Transamerican Gate would be seen for who they were, not judged by the color of their skin. And perhaps that was the most powerful lesson of all. That change, real change, was possible when people of conscience refused to accept injustice, even when confronting entrenched systems that seemed immovable. The Harrington family's stand had shown that the arc of history does indeed bend toward justice, but sometimes it needs a firm push in the right direction. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination in a public place? Would you speak up or stay silent? Comment below with your thoughts. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear this message of courage and transformation. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of standing up against injustice and creating meaningful change in our world. The Harrington family's journey teaches us that true change requires both courage and strategy. When Marcus confronted discrimination against his sons, he didn't merely seek an apology, he demanded systemic transformation. His approach demonstrates that power, when wielded responsibly, can dismantle entrenched injustice. This story reminds us that discrimination persists at all levels of society, affecting even those with privilege and resources. The twins learned that their father's wealth couldn't shield them from racism, but it could become a tool for creating lasting change. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is the difference between revenge and justice. Marcus could have destroyed Trans-American Airlines, but instead chose the harder path of reformation. By focusing on transforming systems rather than punishing individuals, he created impact far beyond one incident. The story also highlights the importance of preparation. The Harrington parents had equipped their sons with both confidence and awareness, preparing them to navigate a world that wouldn't always see their humanity first. Ultimately, this story shows us that change happens when people refuse to accept the way things are, and instead envision the way things should be, then use whatever resources they have to bridge that gap. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could make a difference? What would you do if you were in Marcus's position? Comment below with your thoughts or share a time when you stood up against injustice. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more powerful narratives about courage and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that one person can create meaningful change when they refuse to accept injustice. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Together, we can build a more equitable world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect.